Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Grajdek. I'm Dr. Martha Grajdek. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. We live in a world where working remotely has become a norm for many, whether that means working remotely all of the time or part of the time, such as when one engages in a hybrid type of work presence. Being at the office may be something that is done on a part-time basis or on a more rare or infrequent basis. Unfortunately, FaceTime can still fuel one's career. What that means that unless leaders and managers recognize and understand the importance of proper management and proper leadership for employees who are both on and off-site, proximity and visibility can affect not only the workplace experience, but also one's career. It's all too easy for FaceTime to become career fuel. That could mean in-person presence at the office or at work, but that could also mean FaceTime via technology. Think about all of the remote interactions, remote meetings or communications where companies require that cameras be turned on. So what happens when visibility affects the employee, their experience, their career, their ability for upward or forward movement within the company? It can start with things as simple as skewed ratings of the employee and their performance. Their physical presence or lack thereof can affect how the organization or how the management and leadership within the organization specifically view the employee's commitment and engagement. It can affect the kinds of assignments that employees receive or are trusted with. It can also affect things such as mentorship or sponsorship for the employee. It's not difficult to understand that unless the organization is very much aware of how presence or lack of presence can affect the employee and their experience within the organization, proximity biases can become a serious problem within the company. A good place to start calls for equity diagnostics. Any manager should understand the location and engagement of his or her team. The organization should be able to map who's on site, who's remote, who's hybrid, and what are the correlations to roles and responsibilities. Only a clear picture of what's going on will allow us to look for opportunity gaps, opportunities to make corrections, to make things right. Something else that's important to pay attention to are norms and rituals. How are managers bringing their teams together, especially when the teams contain people who are on-site and off-site? Is there more communication and engagement, or are there more opportunities for employees who are on-site when compared to those who work remotely? Or are all team members included and treated equally? Are things such as time zones considered when teams include remote employees? It's all too easy to insist that everything be done according to the local time zone, but When teams include remote employees, they may be in different time zones. This is when taking turns and rotating meeting time zones is important. If meetings include rotating people who take leads with the meetings or meeting chairs, so to speak, it's important that on-site and off-site employees have the same opportunities. Participation requirements and opportunities should be the same for all employees, regardless of their physical location. When it comes to hybrid teams that have people who work on site as well as those who work off-site, it may be time for managers to rethink team goals. Focus on outcome-based goals rather than parameters that apply strictly to or mostly to the on-site location. Provide tools and guidelines for employees to collaborate regardless of where they are working, whether that's on-site or off-site. Bringing a team together requires that they be able to work together regardless of their whereabouts. It can be all too easy for on-site employees to collaborate and forget or leave out those working remotely. While this may not be intentional, the ramifications can be serious. It's critical that office days have a well-defined purpose. This is especially important for those employees who keep a hybrid schedule, meaning they work some of the time on site at the office and some of the time they work remotely. Switching between on-site and remote work should not come at a price of organization, purpose, and achievement, but rather should be that much more organized and deliberate. So, if an organization requires that employees be at the office at least part of their time, or if the employee chooses to be at the office for some of their time during the week, it's important that office days have a deliberate and well-defined purpose. It's all too easy to get caught up in socializing, catching up, or wasting much of the time at the office without real goals or a purpose. Office managers have a lot of responsibility when it comes to hybrid teams, meaning teams that include members who are on-site and off-site. They must focus on equalizing exposure. All employees must be included and part of the team, regardless of their whereabouts or time zones. This is part of the manager's job. Something else that managers must pay attention to is assignments and responsibilities. Being on-site or off-site should not play in someone's favor or against an employee when it comes to tasks and responsibilities. Think talent and abilities rather than proximity. Pay attention to travel requirements when it comes to your organization, whether that means business-related travels for things such as expos, meeting with customers, or visiting vendors, or simply traveling to the office for remote employees. This is important. Managers really need to pay attention to travel. And remember, fairness goes a long way. Organizations must be aware of any patterns with pay and promotion. Movement within the organization and fair compensation should not be dependent on whether or not employees are at the office on site or work remotely. And finally, it's important that leaders and managers make themselves available to employees, both those on site and those working remotely. All employees should have an equal opportunity to connect and communicate with you as a leader or manager. Being aware of proximity bias and working towards hybrid equity is everyone's responsibility. Employees must speak up to be heard, but it is the leaders and managers who have the most responsibility when it comes to this. Awareness and understanding is step one, but ensuring that proximity bias doesn't take over and providing hybrid equity across the board falls on those in charge. Remember that this is not a one and done event. It is up to the organization to review on a regular basis, perhaps a quarterly basis, whether proximity bias may have crept back into the organization's reality, and actions must be taken to ensure hybrid equality. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. We live in a world where the workplace experience comes in many forms. While some work on-site at the office, others may work remotely. This is no longer rare or uncommon. Of course, some people may keep a hybrid schedule where they find themselves at the office and working remotely some of the time. It's important that leaders and managers do not get stuck in a world of proximity biases, but rather work proactively and diligently towards hybrid equality, where employees, regardless of their location, have the same opportunities within the organization. Things such as focusing on outcome-based goals and providing ways for hybrid teams to truly collaborate are a good start. Making yourself available to your employees equally, regardless of whether they work on-site or remotely, is very important. The organization and its leadership must understand any patterns in terms of pay and promotion across the board for their hybrid teams and all of the employees. Only by understanding such patterns can corrections be made. Remember that it's all too easy to slip back into proximity bias, so an organization has the responsibility of reviewing current practices on a regular basis. Only then do they have a good chance of achieving and maintaining hybrid equality. As this week unfolds, I encourage everyone to consider the idea of proximity bias as it may present itself in your organization, whether you are in a leader or management position or not. It is everyone's responsibility to take some kind of action towards hybrid equality, even if that means speaking up and presenting suggestions to the organization, which may be what those in non-management positions are able to do. If you work remotely or have a hybrid schedule, this may be especially important for you. Your own managers may not realize the existence of proximity bias within the organization. For those of you who experience this podcast in an audio-only version, I encourage you to check out my YouTube channel, Stress Free with Dr. G, where you can find the video version of the podcast. While you're there, check out some of the other videos. They focus on stress management. Stress Free with Dr. G is available on YouTube, and the link for that is in the description below. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you here again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well.